a mother of a mass shooter has been convicted of the mass shooting. This sets a different type of precedent. Some are saying it was about time. I'm going to take you to the reading of the verdict. Here it is.
I am.
Could you please read your verdict?
Individually?
Sure.
Okay. On count 1 of involuntary manslaughter as to Madison Baldwin, we find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter. On count 2 of involuntary manslaughter in regards to Tate Muir, we find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter. On count 3, as to involuntary manslaughter regarding Hannah St. Juliana, we find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter. And in count 4 of involuntary manslaughter against Justin Schilling, we find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter.
Thank you for allowing me to proceed.
Yep, put it up full mass. The attorney seemed more shocked than the defendant. A jury has now found Jennifer Crumbley, the mother of the Michigan school shooter, Ethan Crumbley, let's put up Ethan, guilty of involuntary manslaughter in connection with the shooting deaths of 4 students at Oxford High from November 2021. He has pleaded guilty, and the parents are both going to be held accountable. The mother has been found guilty of involuntary manslaughter. The father will have a case coming up in a couple of months. So Crumbley was found guilty on all 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. I'm going to explain what doctrine this is in law. Involuntary manslaughter in connection with the shooting, 1 for each victim. Madison Baldwin, 17, Tate Myre, 16, Justin Schilling, 17, and Hannah St. Juliana was only 14 years of age. The jury deliberated for roughly 11 hours, beginning on Monday morning. Sentencing is scheduled for April 9th. Jennifer and James Crumbley are a rare case of parents being charged in connection with a shooting carried out by their son. James Crumbley, who also faces 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, will have a separate trial in March. Now, I know some people are looking at this and saying, oh my goodness, while what happened was horrific, to convict the parents of murder seems to be well beyond prosecutorial authority here. This is akin to what we would call in law depraved indifference, okay? Depraved indifference. It is the same line of thinking that you can have such depravity in how you respond or lack thereof, a lack of response, that you knew your lack of response would likely cause injury or death to someone else. And typically, there's a responsibility factor involved, meaning you have a responsibility of care. Naturally, a parent has a responsibility of care. No one would argue that. When I give you the details as to why this jury found Ms. Crumbley guilty, you are probably going to agree. Now, the jury foreperson told ABC News, ABC News producer, as she was walking to her car, that the verdict, quote, came down to the fact that Jennifer was the last adult with the gun. Ethan Crumbley, who was 15 at the time, has been sentenced to life in prison for killing 4 students and injuring 7 others at Oxford High School. He pleaded guilty to 24 charges, including first-degree premeditated murder and terrorism causing death. In a days-long trial, prosecutors presented damning evidence of the Crumbley parents, who bought their son the gun he used in the shooting. Let me just stop there before I continue. This is a little bit different than some of the other cases where a minor is involved. They specifically purchased the gun for the troubled minor, knowing that he was in fact troubled, okay? Mentally unstable. They purchased the gun as a birthday gift. Not only did they purchase the gun, they then taught him how to shoot it. They trained him, took him to the shooting range with the gun. Once again, understanding he is having mental health difficulties. So this was a presentation submitted to the jury. There's more. All right, so they purchased the gun used in the shooting, failing to respond to warning signs exhibited by the shooter prior to the attack. School officials had called the Crumbley parents to the school the morning of the shooting. They called the parents to the school the morning of the shooting after finding violent drawings he had done on a school assignment. He's telling you what he's feeling on the inside. His outward expression is his inward reality. So the school picked up on this, called the parents in. It was just that serious. These pictures were that violent. He was also caught searching online for bullets at school. He's searching for bullets at school. They have the forensic computer data for that. Watching shooting videos in class and drawing violent images on several other papers. We're talking about papers that were submitted for assignment, all right? So he's letting people know, possibly even calling out for help in a subconscious way. School officials testified that the parents, when they were at the school, they chose not to take their son home. They said no, despite the school telling them that he needs to get immediate help and offering them, the school then offered them facilities that provided same day mental health care services. The parents said no. Now, the parents told the school they could not take him home because they both had to return to work. I want you to remember this point because this point comes back up in the trial. So they say they can't do it, they got to go back to work, and that if he left school, he would have to walk home and be alone. The school officials who were worried about his mental health did not think it was a good idea for him to be alone, since they were concerned he was considering suicide. The parents chose to send him back to class and told the school that they would get him mental health care later. Jennifer Crumbley and her attorney, Shannon Smith, argued that the school had been nonchalant during the meeting and did not insist he be taken home. Obviously, that was refuted. During the trial, the CEO of the company where Jennifer Crumbley worked, testified that she could have left work if she needed to care for her son, or she could have brought him back with her to the office. It had been done before. On the stand, Crumbley actually did, in fact, admit that she would have been able to not return to work. Now, what do we have? We have a lie. We have a lie out of convenience to not be a parent to the child you are responsible for. She lied. She admitted on the stand, I lied. So what is the connection? Once again, depraved indifference, all right? That is the line of thinking here. In text messages she sent after the shooting, Jennifer Crumbley told a man that she was having an affair with. She had time for that. That she was having an affair with longtime friend Brian Maloshi, that the shooting, quote, could have been prevented. She said this in the text. And that the school should not have allowed him to return to class. But madam, once again, a second lie. You're the one who made him go back to class. The school was trying to get him out of the school into a mental health facility, according to the facts. So she has basically convicted herself, but she just changed the narrative. Ethan Crumbley's parents purchased him the gun he used for the shooting as a gift and took him to the shooting range before the attack. Prosecutors argued that the parents did not secure the gun, nor did they limit the son's access to it. Jennifer Crumbley testified that it was her husband's responsibility to ensure the gun was stored securely and their son could not access it. One of the arguments made by her lawyer was that she did not know guns that well. That did not fly. Smith also argued that in Oxford, where the school shooting happened, it is common for students who go hunting with guns. It is common for students to go hunting with guns. A school official testified that many seniors take prom pictures with their guns. And they are often reminded not to come to school with their guns during hunting season. The parents of several of the students killed in the Oxford school shooting told Good Morning America Tuesday they were pleased with the verdict. Okay, now you have a more holistic picture here, all right? Understand cause and effect. Understand this may be an extreme way to hold a parent accountable, responsible, but clearly, we're not talking about one failure. We're not talking about two. We're talking about a system of inaction, a system of ignoring. Definitely seems depraved to me, depraved indifference. Now, let's go to the underlying principle here, gun culture. Gun culture. A school official testified during this trial. Guns are so pervasive in the culture of their local community that students will literally bring the guns to school. And they have to be reminded during hunting season, you can't bring the gun to the school. Completely against the law. Most jurisdictions would arrest you on spot. It's called zero tolerance rule, all right? So if we were talking about this in the context of, let's say, Chicago, guns as culture would be part of the narrative. We'll be talking about guns, guns, guns. This is part of gun culture. This is an expression of gun culture. But all of a sudden, when we talk about it as it relates to suburban America, no longer is gun culture part of the argument. While these parents absolutely, in my opinion, were negligent in a criminal way, the gun culture plays into this in an extreme way as well. You cannot talk about one and dismiss the other. Students are bringing guns to the damn school. They have to be reminded not to. All right, whilst it's a hell of a thing, it's an extreme precedent in case law for sure, but there are some people saying, given the circumstances, the jury made the right decision. What say you?
I would say I'd have to agree with the jury here in the sense that they empowered this kid to not just use guns, but to own a gun. He couldn't go to a store, a gun shop, and legally purchase the gun on his own. He's not legally old enough to own and register a gun under his name, right? And so they enabled him to participate in a criminal act by just owning a gun and having free access to the gun. They're responsible in that sense. And, this thing can go both ways in terms of how well a parent knows their kid. Some parents might know, like, nah, Johnny's a little unstable. He doesn't need to have a gun. But as you well know, Dr. Richey, a lot of parents are in denial about what kind of kids they're raising, are in denial about how angry, how violent their kid is capable of being. And so, I would say that ultimately they do bear the responsibility when you think about, like, it was them who gave him this gun to have as a 15-year-old. And then, to speak to the culture, a lot of times I feel a little uneasy as a Yankee talking about gun culture, because just the idea that at 15 years old, any adult would have said to me, I entrust you with this gun is anathema. It's impossible. Yeah. It's impossible to even understand. And especially this idea where you would bring guns to school, where damn near half the public schools in New York City had metal detectors before you even walked in. Just the idea that kids would be running around with guns in school, kids having guns at all is crazy. Kids carrying them around their classmates is nuts. And just the idea that this having a gun culture permeates throughout even youth culture in certain areas in our country is pretty scary.
Yeah, and I do believe the jury took into consideration the knowledge of the parent. And that was a point recognized not only by the prosecutor, but also by the jury members who decided, obviously, to convict. The child did not try to hide this from anybody. And the parents were well aware of the mental decline and still decided to purchase the gun, train the minor on how to shoot the gun, and left the gun completely accessible to the minor. If another adult outside of the parents would have done so, we would be saying, yep, guilty.